Welcome to my basement. In this video we will look at how you can connect the Roland SC-55 to Windows 10. We will briefly go through the setup and the cables required. We will look into how you can play Midi files on your retro device from Windows 10. We will look at how you can change the default Midi device using external software. We will look at how you can configure DosBox to enable Midi out to your new retro device. And lastly, we will look at the history of the Roland SC-55. This is a simple overview of my setup. To connect the Roland SC-55 to your computer, you will need some RCA cables, and lastly I recommend the Roland UM1 MK2 USB MIDI interface. Instead of buying a used earlier version, I recommend this one as it's still supported by Windows 10 and 11. The Windows driver is automatically installed when you connect it to the PC. The cable also has built-in LEDs that will help you a lot if you need to debug your setup. The leftmost LED will indicate if the USB cable is connected and that the drivers are actually correctly installed. The two rightmost LEDs will indicate if the MIDI music is being sent to or from your device. You connect the MIDI in cable to the MIDI in on your device. RCA cables are also needed, firstly to enable pass-through of digital sound effects or speech. This is needed for games that use both digital effects and MIDI music, like for instance Doom and Duke Nukem. Otherwise it will be a MIDI music only experience. An RCA cable is also needed to output the sound from the Roland sound canvas to your amplifier, or in my case the Logitech Z333 multimedia speakers. To play MIDI music on your retro device in Windows 10 or 11 you have two options, as Windows does not out of the box enables you to change the MIDI device anymore. Thus, if you want to listen to MIDI music on your retro sound module, you either have to find a MIDI player that enables you to change the MIDI device, or you have to install external software that enables you to change the default MIDI device in Windows. The latter will enable all the MIDI capable players to output MIDI to your retro sound module. Firstly, we will look at the SoundFont MIDI player 6 that enables you to choose the MIDI device from the player itself. And this is easily done by clicking the cog icon and just selecting the MIDI device. In this case it's recognized as the UM1. And clicking OK. And that's it. If you just want to play the occasional Midi file, then SoundFont is up for the job, but I fairly quickly found that I wanted better library and playlist support. And what other retro way than to use good old Winamp. To make this work in any MIDI-capable player, you will have to map the default MIDI device in Windows to something else than the standard Microsoft GS Wavetable synth. This is done by using external software. In my case, I'm using the MIDI mapper from Coolsoft. It's as easy as selecting the device you would like and hitting the OK button. So in our example, we will select the UM1 USB interface and press OK. Next, let's test it out in Winamp. To configure DosBox, you will have to check the enumeration of the MIDI devices and also verify that DosBox actually sees your MIDI device. To list the MIDI devices, you use the mixer command. So mixer list MIDI, and you can see that our UM1 USB interface has number 3 assigned to it. Then we need to change the DosBox config file accordingly. And the section you want to change is the MIDI config. This is by default not set, but you set this to the device number listed, and then this, in our case this was 3, and you save the DosBox config file. And that's it. Next we will look at launching some games and listening to some music. The Roland SC-55 was the first sound module to support General Midi when it was released in 1991. It also came preloaded with the Roland MT-32 variation bank, but it lacked the MT-32's reprogrammability. This means that it can be specifically booted into MT-32 mode with the default MT-32 instruments. Some games use this. No custom sounds or rearrangements, but sadly most games do use it. Because of this, the gaming support for the MT-32 in this mode is not the best, and also why people often own more than one sound module once they have fallen down the rabbit hole. Both a general MIDI capable sound module, like the SC-55, for games after 1991, and the MT-32 for games before this. This way you will get the best MIDI experience possible for all retro games that uses MIDI music. Although the Roland SC-55 was general MIDI compliant, it didn't stop there. It also implemented its own standard called GS, or General Standard, or also known as the General Sound. This extended the general MIDI specification. GS defines 98 additional tone instruments, 15 more percussion instruments, 8 more drum kits, 3 effects, and some other features. This is also why you can see that some games, in addition to general MIDI, also have support for sound canvas mode, so that they can take advantage of this. The SC-55 got an update in 1993 when the MK2 version was released. The MK2 does have extra instruments, but outside of the general MIDI standard, and can handle 4 more voices. But as far as I know, there are no games that take advantage of this. One drawback of this later mode is that it's lost the capital tone fallback or CTF support, which is used accidentally in a small selection of games. If CTF was used, the device would just fall back to playing instrument number 129 instead, which is silence. Thus, there are reports about games not sounding correctly on the MK2 version. If you like content like this, be sure to like and subscribe. See you next time.